There we are.
And there we are. We are live. So hello, Christina. Thank you
Hi,
for coming.
Stephanie.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to chat with you. I have so many wonderful questions, and I'm so interested in
Mm,
your practice and just
mm,
the combination of all of it, the marriage of psychology and astrology, and in connecting with you, I was just and in our focus series right now in terms of spirituality and practice, I'm like,
mm,
holy cow, it just
mm,
so nicely.
mm,
So
mm.
I'm excited. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Um,
my pleasure.
and I'm starting off right away
Mm.
because I just am, and I want to. And so, do you know? Of course you do, but I'm asking, what is your big three? So your moon,
Oh, of
your
course, yes.
rising, your sun.
Yeah. So I'm a Virgo.
Okay.
So Virgo sun.
Yes.
My moon is in Sagittarius,
Okay.
and I have a Taurus rising. I have a lot of Earth in my chart, which
Okay.
does really, really reflect how I approach my work. It has to be really practical and grounded, and people really need to be able to see a connection, right,
Yep.
between all of this kind of woo woo or
Yes.
potentially ungrounded
Mhm.
material, and then how do you really bring it into your life. So yeah, all of that Earth is comes in handy.
I am so when I
Mm,
ask because I was explaining before I hit
mm,
record. I'm so interested in
mm,
astrology, and I'm trying to immerse myself with as much
mm,
knowledge as I can
mm,
and things like that. So I've just discovered recently I am a Cancer sun, I
mm.
am a Sagittarius rising, and
Okay.
I am a Libra moon.
Ah.
Just that alone, like I say that like I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about. Like I'm just discovering what that means and how that all connects, and
Mm,
in discovering that sort of this past year or so, just so that knowledge and how it's made so many connections for myself.
mm,
And we'll get a bit more into that as we go, but
mm.
just having that understanding of things has really allowed a bit more grace for myself and
Yeah,
understanding
yeah, totally.
of myself versus for so
Hmm.
long I think what that meant and certain pushes and pulls that I could never
Mm,
understand about myself, and coming to astrology and having more of that information has really helped with things. So
mm,
we'll
mm.
get into that. But I would love to know, how long have you been in this field? So you are a psychoanalyst as
Yep.
well as you are a Jungian analyst.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it is kind of it's a Jungian
Jungian.
psychoanalytic process.
Okay.
So the term psychoanalysis is really relates to a depth psychology.
Okay.
It's a psychology of the unconscious, and the Jungian approach has a particular kind of approach. It links spirituality, dreams, mythology, fairy tales, that kind of stuff, which is different than a Freudian psychoanalysis,
Right.
which tends to look at things like superego and id, and and things
Right.
like that. So the Jungian approach is really the how of it. But a psychoanalytic approach is just really about looking below the surface.
And how long have you been practicing? Like how long I'm interested first how long you've been
Mm,
practicing in general.
mm, mhm,
And then I'm so interested how you came to the marriage of
mm,
both of these sort of, I guess,
yeah,
what you would typically think as very separate practices, and how
mm,
you've actually come to combine them both. And I think that's so incredible. And I think that's I think my opinion as it when you're working with people and
yeah,
trying to
yeah, totally,
understand self or
yeah,
help people understand self, and that can be sometimes very compartmentalized, and I think you're combining this much broader
mm,
perspective, and
mm,
I think that's incredible. So
mm.
how long have you been practicing, and how did the marriage of the two come to be?
Well, so I've been practicing uh, basically for 20 years. I returned from the C.G Jung Institute in
Right.
Zurich in 2002. So this July is kind of my 20th anniversary of graduation, which is pretty exciting.
Wow.
Um, and what is interesting is that the journeys started at the same time. And I think that's really, really interesting. So before I went into training to be a Jungian analyst, and I still do this work, I am a nonprofit consultant, and I worked in the nonprofit sector. I have a business called the Canadian Nonprofit Academy, which I provide board training and consulting for nonprofits. So, but I was looking for a shift. I was looking for, it was my midlife crisis. I was looking for something different. And I'd had a deep interest in Jungian psychology, since my mid-20s. And so in this process of trying to decide what it was that I wanted to do next, I happened to be going through a Pluto transit. And so I was writing my application to the C.G Jung Institute in Zurich.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through this incredible Pluto transit, which I didn't really understand what this was. And so I had my first astrological reading in 1995.
Okay.
As I was, preparing for, also while I was working on my application. And it was wonderful because it gave me a context. It gave me language to understand this kind of Plutonian evolutionary transit that I was going through. And that's really what Pluto transits do. And
Sorry,
so
I'm going to pause you. When you say, and I wrote it down.
Okay.
When you say Pluto, this is part of terms that I'm going to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
When you say you were in Pluto transit, I'm assuming at the time you didn't know that.
That is correct.
Like when you're in it, it's like you don't necessarily know. You didn't have the terminology for it then.
Yeah.
But when you say Pluto transit or in transit, what does that mean? Like change, transition?
Yeah, for sure. And it is like the theme of a Pluto transit is deep evolutionary change in the psyche.
Got it.
And so basically, if you think about, so we have our charts, right, which is the snapshot of all of the psychological archetypal dynamics of when we were born. But then the planets continue to journey around the sun. And as they journey, they come in various contacts with our natal chart or our natal planets. And that's what's called a transit. So,
got it.
Anyway, so it was really, really helpful to understand what I was actually going through. And then I couldn't quite get enough of it because I just, it was one of those things that I really had to understand exactly what was happening. What is this thing called Pluto? And, yada, yada, yada. So I went to Zurich in the fall of 1997. And I found, which was really, really interesting, I found that Jung was very interested in astrology. And I found a number of the analysts who I was training with also had a deep understanding of astrology. And so through my training, I was working on both things. So I was working analytically with the analysts who were interested in astrology, and I was also doing my training. And at the same time, which was really quite fortunate for me, is Liz Green happened to be living in Küsnacht, just above the Institute. I think she was doing some research. And so she was giving regular lectures in Zurich, day-long seminars on astrology and psychology and astrology and Jungian psychology. Liz Green is a professional astrologer, much more known to be an astrologer, but she's also a certified Jungian analyst. She trained in in London, England. So so I just kind of lapped it all up. And then, so the dance, so it's really been a dance between the two things. And, mainly, Jung, it's not, it's more known now, but Jung, was very interested in astrology from the time about 1909. And he, his letters to Freud talk about that in those early years. His daughter, Greta Bauman Jung, became a very famous astrologer. And in fact, she ran many charts for her father. So he would talk about running the chart for his clients. And so that's so I, kind of followed suit. So there is, there is a connection, because both are looking at the world symbolically,
Right.
or through the lens of an image.
Okay.
Right. And so, the chart with all of the planets and stuff like that is the same thing. It's looking at the world through the symbol of whatever the planet is.
And so what is Jung? And I don't know much about it, so that's why.
Yep.
So what is it rooted in? Like, is it this idea that you sort of mentioned it before, that we are looking, we're looking through the psychology of going beneath the surface in terms of like the spiritual connections of things, the planetary connections of things. What is Jung rooted in? If I've never heard anything about C.G. Jung and the sort of his approach to this process, what should we know about it? What it's rooted in?
Well, it's rooted in the soul, and that if you look at the root of the word psychology,
right,
it is the study of the soul, psyche, soulology study.
right.
And so in the soul, we're talking about how does the soul manifest? How does it relate? So, it manifests in our dreams, in synchronistic events, in astrology, in mythology, in stories. And it's all about this kind of deeper connection to just the human condition, if that kind of makes sense. So, so it's not just about, what bugs us or what ails us, or, what makes us nutty, but it's really about how do we live a rich, meaningful life that embraces all of what it means to be human. And that includes spirituality. It includes where we get wounded. It's about how do we heal, all of those things.
Which I find it incredibly fascinating, because from a conventional standpoint, I think, or I should say, from my experiences in working with counselors or psychologists in the past, or seeing them in session, there's usually typically a focus on condition, right? So behavior, condition. I mean, of course, feelings and things like that are incorporated, and people I've worked with in the past have been great. But there's definitely not necessarily an emphasis on that spiritual side, on going a little bit deeper in terms of that approach of the human condition, and sort of how we've arrived to where we've arrived, looking at it from the bigger scope, or scope, that inward, bringing that forward. So I find that incredibly relevant, of course, and incredibly, I think there is a bit of a shift, I think, in terms of how we're approaching it, I hope, anyway.
Well, it is, we have been very disconnected from that level of the psyche for a really, really long time. And I do believe that our kind of collective existential angst is
Yeah.
because we have been disconnected.
Agreed.
And it's not about religion.
Right.
Um, it's about our relationship to something larger, however you want to define it. So my little dog is here, so
Oh, awesome.
she may shake, and you'll hear her little.
Oh, that's okay. That's actually wonderful. Welcome back. Um, no, I could not agree
Hmm.
more in terms of the separation. And I do feel like just even the terms manifestation, spirituality, that
Mm.
having conversations about with people like that's happened
Yeah, yeah.
cosmically in the past year for me in terms of conversations and the decipheration of spirituality versus religion. What does
Hmm.
that mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
just like the lens of which we sort of are looking at each other and ourselves, I hope and will continue to kind of shift
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Now, what I
yeah.
would love to ask you next, for those that
Hmm.
have never done it, considered it, is you were talking about charts and planetary
Yep,
connections
yep.
and alignments, things like that. So, an astrology reading.
Hmm.
I had one. I had one a while ago. It was kind of a oh my goodness, trying to think of the proper word. It was a reading of human design, is
Oh,
what
yeah,
what
yep,
it
yeah,
was
I know
what it was
about that.
phrased
Yep,
as.
yep.
And I got some great insights, great insights in terms of that. But in
Mhm.
terms of an astrology reading,
Hmm.
can you describe for us, pretending someone has no concept of what it is, but they've heard the term? So, what is an astrology reading, and what is it? What information do you gain from having one? What is it all about?
Okay. Good question, especially from the perspective of no. If you have to explain it to somebody who doesn't know about
Yeah.
it,
Yes.
um, so so the way I approach readings
Yes.
is we get your date of birth, the time,
Hmm.
and the location,
Yes.
and we create a Mandela, in a sense,
Okay.
of a circle
Hmm.
that has the placements of the planets in various relationships around the circle.
Right.
And that reflects the archetypal potential of what exists in your personality. It's kind of like it's a map, right? You come into the world, and here is your map,
Hmm.
dependent on, as I said, date, time, and location of birth. And then the planets are around the circle, and they are in various relationships to each other.
Right.
And through that, we can identify certain types of personality characteristics, certain kinds of proclivities in terms of interests, and both in terms of strengths and also challenges.
Right.
And when you also look at, and it, in a way, what it does is it identifies a little bit about your life journey, your individuation path, which is this path of wholeness. So you come in, and here is this map of wholeness, and then you have however long you have on the planet to see if you can realize all of those personality attributes and characteristics that are embodied in the chart. Often what happens is that, when I do a reading, I'm not really telling anybody anything new,
Right.
right? It's basically, affirming whatever it is that they already know.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is actually is very interesting.
Hmm.
Now there are some I have done readings for people where I've done all the work and stuff like that, and then they go, oh no, that's not really me, and I'm going, what? How does that work? um, and then I think, for whatever reason, like a trauma or whatever, they kind of hide out in a particular part of their chart, and
Yeah.
then they just kind of stay there for their life, which means that there is all of this other potential that actually never gets realized.
Mm.
Now, the other thing that the way that I do astrological readings is that there are certain techniques that one can look at in early childhood that can identify potential wounding and archetypal patterns that maybe the person is going to take most of the rest of their life to figure it out. And so it does provide this kind of very interesting lens on life and meaning, and helping to identify purpose, not in terms of what you're doing in the world per se, but purpose in the sense of what is the essential psychological work that you've got to do, in this particular lifetime, given the chart that you've got.
Right. And part of my question is, and it's kind of indirectly answered, so I'll state it for clarity, but it's that what's the benefit of having this information, right? So I come in and I get a reading, and it's like you said, sometimes, most of the time, there's affirmation in what people kind of already know. But I will say, in terms of my own process and in what I'm learning of myself, but there is this sense of, like you mentioned earlier, terminology, connection, and clarity, where it's like, I'm a Cancer, like I said, in terms of sun, and I cry every day. I'm a Cancer, I cry all the time. And growing up, like as a kid, I remember always hating that about myself, because I hated that I was so emotional. I hated that when I was really angry, I would cry, and when I was really happy, I would cry, and I always felt so overwhelmed by my emotions, and I didn't know how to navigate them. I didn't have the tools, didn't understand what's wrong with, and people interpret me the same way, where it's like, oh my God, you're so much, and it's like, and I always tried to like mask that about myself, and it wasn't until, again, like in recent years and coming into astrology, understanding things, reading more about it in terms of like the emotions of myself, understanding how things align, that I finally started to understand and appreciate this about myself. And that sort of, I think, allowed a sense, I don't know, of calm, a sense of acceptance, where it's like, no, it is okay. There was just this sort of lift of myself, and that's just one aspect of many things that I've kind of I'm figuring out, but it provided this sense of relief, reassurance, like you said, because like I read it and heard it, and I'm like, yep, that makes sense to me. But it was just, there was this like peace that followed it, and then as soon as that started to happen, I still am enveloped in it, and my brother as well, whom I adore, and we both share this kind of connection where we have these conversations, and we're so interested in these type of kismic relations. And then you start to understand, like, how do people not know or not want to know? And there's just so much, and there's also so much more science and history than I think is coined in the collective, right? Because there's the woo-woo and the witchery and the sort of daily horoscopes you find at the back of, teen magazines that I'll speak for myself, that I always kind of associated with astrology, and not even understanding the depths of it and how the history of it. And it's like, of course we're connected kismically. Of course planetary alignment would impact us. It's like, oh my God, like how, and energetic beings, like, of course, like it just started to make sense, honestly.
Well, there's something you said that was really, really important. Let's say I don't know much about your family history, but let's say you grew up in, an overly academic kind of family, right? And here you are, this little Cancer who's so emotional in a family that is, well, also because societally we're a kind of emotional phobic, using the word of Miriam Greenspan. So, but if your family, if your parents were like academics and like just did not know what a feeling was, right? They've got this little kid who is, this emotional little bundle of sensitivities. then you as a kid could, that would be the potential for a huge amount of wounding,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're not being validated for like who you are, and then you're trying to adapt to the
Yes.
environment in which you're living,
Yeah.
and you're saying, I can't be, this is how the shadow works, the Jungian shadow, I can't be that, because being an emotional little bundle of of tears and sensitivities and stuff is not accepted in my family, so I can't be that, so I'm going to have to adapt.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have the reference to astrology, you could kind of go through your entire life saying, I'm this because that's exactly what I had to be to survive in my family of origin. But in fact, you're really a bundle of emotional
Yeah.
sensitivities, right?
And it's an acceptance of yourself. Well, it's an understanding of yourself.
Yeah, totally.
And then the
Yeah.
acceptance of it, where it's like, oh, you're like, exactly. Like, I have that understanding. Oh, it is okay. Oh, okay. And it's sometimes just that simplistic.
Yeah.
It's like, no, and my relationships, I think, have changed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One part I want to mention too, in terms of interaction
Mm.
with like friendships as well as intimate relationships. And so I've just discovered, so my Sagittarius rising and a Libra moon, I have I remember having conversations in my 20s with friends. And I said, I have this weird push and pull. I said, I have this like need, desire, want of like routine and academics and learning and structure. And I'm a traditionalist in very specific ways. And I've always felt that way. And then there's this other part of me that sneaks in that it's like, screw it, let's travel. Screw it. Like, let's get out of here. And then I get so bored. And it's like the mundane of which I know I need and rely on in terms of routine sometimes. And then after a while, it's like, I'm out. Like, this sucks. Like, I'm
totally.
out of here.
Yeah,
and it's like I'm going the opposite way. And I call it the push and pull of me.
Yeah.
I never had terminology for that. I thought I was always restless and I couldn't commit to things, and I would start something and then I couldn't finish it. And it's like, what is wrong with me? And again,
that's a Sagittarius ascendant.
Yeah. I'm like, and then in learning this, like in learning my moons, my sun, and I haven't even gotten to houses yet. We're not getting, that's another part of astrology. I'm just learning. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many houses. But just that alone, when I came to that, I became emotional because I'm like, that makes sense, because I always felt it. And I always thought there is something, like I'm unreliable. I started coining these terms for myself and categorizing myself as a specific person in a specific way. It's like, that's just how I am. I start things, I get bored, I move on. It's like, no, but no, in terms of the why. And then creating a lifestyle or a space for myself where it's like, I know I'm going to start this. I know I'm going to, and I know I need this after a while. And it's just that perspective of myself and language of myself allows that sort of, allows the different kinds of relationships to stay with me and more accepting of those types of things. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
yes, lots of self-compassion too.
Yeah,
the cultivation of compassion for oneself, and the inherent kind of complexity of who we are, right?
Yes.
I mean, we all have these kind of competing personalities, and I think that the other benefit of astrology is that it does bring awareness to the conflicts.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
And I have, as I said, I have a Sagittarius moon, and that sometimes conflicts with the Virgo, because that's a square between Virgo. Although it's mutable, it's not so bad. But I do know, like, I do have that kind of restlessness. I need a lot of stimulation. I love journeying, whether it's inwardly or outwardly, and traveling. But it doesn't. It sometimes can clash with a Virgo need for order.
Yes.
And I just know that. And so, I kind of, I wrestle with that, but to bring the awareness to it, then we don't kind of beat ourselves up. And as you said, like we stop saying what's wrong with me, and start saying, okay, well, I know I've got this conflict here. How do I work with it? How do I transform it? I often think about, I think about the various levels of our manifestation of various energies that are reflected in the planets as a kind of a vibrational level. Right. And so, we can express a planet's energy at a lower vibration, or we can, raise it above as we bring more awareness to it. So like the Sagittarius, yes, restless, jumping from things to things, or a number of ways that you can express that Sagittarius ascendant unconsciously. And then as you work with it, you bring some consciousness to it, and then you say, aha, there you are, my Sagittarius ascendant. Okay, I know I need a little stimulation now. I need something. I need to shake it up just a little bit. So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, you may, book a writing retreat.
Yes. It's even an approach to my, like you said before, like even an approach to family. So in this sort of discipline and study, just there's been so much more peace in terms of my own family and relationships with my
totally
partner. And it's like I very much, when my kids get a little bit older, because they're very young right now, but I want them to be so familiar with their chart, and I want them to understand all dynamics of themselves, understanding connections to bigger things in the world, energetically and cosmically. Because like you said, within your family, you don't mean to not validate one another. You don't necessarily know the difference, but it does happen. And there's some traumas and things, and that really want to redirect the language of what's wrong with me versus, no, this is who part of exactly. Creating a lifestyle for that.
Well, and also, it can be incredibly helpful for you as a parent to know what the chart is of your children. Especially if there is a conflict, right? Right. So let's say you've got a Libra moon. Let's say, one of your kids has an Aries moon. So they're totally opposed to each other, right? Your Libra moon is cautious. They weigh all of the options. They want everybody to get along. There's like some diplomacy, good mediation, all of those things. And an Aries moon is like, don't care about that. But, I'm off.
Yes.
So, that helps you to see them as individuals and not try to say, oh, why are you like this?
Yes. And we did a mini one with my kids because we did a mini one. I want to wait a little longer for them, but just a couple of points, like it was simplistic things about eating and like dietary and like nutrition. And my daughter, likes to eat later, which is true, and slower. I'm like, yep.
Okay.
Yep. And my son, who is so much more, very similar to my partner, just so inquisitive and communicative, and it's like, I get it. Like, and I'm seeing them both. I'm like, this is where I'm in, and I'm like, they're so less emotional, like less that way. And I'm just like over here, like wanting to hug everybody. Anyway. So again, even that approach where I can laugh and giggle versus not having that understanding and being like, why is it this? Why isn't it this way? We should be doing this. And it's like, just different lens. So
totally. It's
sorry, I know why I wanted to pause, because I wanted to actually get into the courses in terms of the knowledge and the supports and things that people should know. I thought it was a great segue to talk about the courses of which you have available to people?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a course which I've got a couple of courses which I usually offer in a cycle of every 2 years. So the ones coming up is Cosmos and Character,
Okay.
or personality path. That's probably going to come up in the next couple of months or so. And what it is to really connect individuation path with what's going on astrologically. So it's what I do is I take all of the this idea that our individuation or our path of growth can be seen throughout our life. And so we look at all of the major parts of the chart, so the rising sign, the moon, the sun, and what that looks like, but also examine all of those significant midlife, or like they're not generational, but we all go through particular passages throughout our life.
Right.
And so now I'm in my early 60s. And so as I look back at my life, I can see the pattern of things start to unfold. Like things that I started in my early 30s, that came to a culmination in my mid 40s, and now is coming around in terms of an experience of integration, having that kind of perspective, and then working with people to see how that manifests in their own lives. And what that does, I think, is then engages in, or offers people a deeper sense of meaning in terms of the purpose of their lives. It's not necessarily about what we do for a living, although, that's how we contribute to society. It's about what we have to work on in our personalities. Like, what do we have to be doing? What are the wounds that we have to overcome, or what are the what are those challenges that we have to deal with, so that we become full people. So that's probably coming up. So I'll probably if people join my waiting list, which is just on the cjbecker.com contact page, you'll get people will be able to get notification of that. Right. And the other course and then I offer with a really good friend of mine who's an art therapist, we offer these series of using fairy tales in creative process. So we go through a particular fairy tale. We've done two. We did The Handless Maiden and The Myth of Inanna, which we just finished. And we go through each of the myth and look at how, what does that tell us about our lives? And then my friend Charlene, who's this art therapist, creates a creative process to help use artwork or poetry or anything creative to access the deeper meaning in people's lives. And we're going to be doing another one probably related to Mars retrograde in the fall. The Inanna, many people have made the connection between Inanna, the myth of Inanna, and the Venus retrograde. So we just finished that Venus retrograde. It was just it was like 3 months. We mirrored everything related to the retrograde. It just actually worked out that everything just, was in alignment. So we're going to do that with Mars, which is coming up. So we'll probably do some kind of fairy tale related to the masculine for women, like a robber bridegroom or maybe Bluebeard or something like that, and look at how to transform our relationship to our own inner masculine through the creative process. So we'll be doing that in the fall. And then the other thing I have is a program, 8-week program, which I'll probably offer spring of 2023. called Befriend Your Shadow and Find Your Soul, which is all about shadow work and how do you access the shadow, how do you befriend it. So
that's amazing. Well, and I will also make sure all that information will be on our website and within the show notes. People can definitely
great, fantastic.
share with you. Oh yeah, like easily and as they really should. Now you said something, and I have it written down, so I'm asking. Here we go. So in my nose deep, which we cannot get into, and that course I'm on the waiting list, but I'm just saying there are terms that I have to quickly ask. What is retrograde?
Oh yeah, it's okay.
What's it? And I have it here because I've heard, and we were just coming out of Venus, and then I heard we're in Mercury retrograde, and I'm like, what is retrograde?
Okay, so it's actually it's an illusion, but it happens. So like so here we are, we're on the Earth, and the Earth, orbits the sun.
Yes.
And then related to the Earth, we also see all of the various planets. So Mercury and Venus and Mars. Yes. Now, because the orbits of Mercury, Venus, and Mars, well, all of the planets actually go retrograde at one point, but the ones that are we know more as Mercury retrograde, Venus, and Mars, because the orbits are different around the sun. Related to the Earth, if you actually look at the sky, because the orbits are different, you'll see like Mercury going forward, and then it goes backwards, and then it goes forward again. So that's related to the Earth.
Okay.
So that when it goes backwards you can actually see it in the sky. It kind of looks like a big S.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what's called retrograde. So so Mercury, like all of the planets do this, they go through a period, they go through several degrees of the ecliptic, which is this big kind of circular thing around the Earth. They go forward through a number of the degrees.
Yes.
And they slow down. And then they reverse back through the degrees. But it's an illusion, because like the planets are still orbiting, they're still moving forward, right? But it's all in relationship to the Earth, the relationship between the Earth and the sun and the planet. Does that help?
Yes. No, it does, because and I'm giggling. Okay, because I said, I think when we were having this conversation, and like Mercury in retrograde, and then I was talking to someone like, oh my gosh, and that's why like I'm forgetting things, and like it's just this weird period in time. And then I thought, I'm like, okay, planets can't go backwards. And retrograde, I think, means backwards, because everything's like going like, and this is just how I talk. Everything's going like crazy. I'm like, planets can't go backwards. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I can't be right. But that is, and my brother and I had this conversation. I'm like, planets can't go backwards, can they? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, I don't get it. But I did get it. So it's like, I got it. Because like, again, it's just, and to say retrograde means it's going, like, when things are kind of the illusion of sort of going the other way, and things are getting a little, the feelings of things getting a little bit more chaotic. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, especially around Mercury, you can always, like, I usually track these things, but like if I'd forgotten to track it, I'm going, what's up? People are canceling, or things aren't quite going. And I went, okay, then I better go check. I usually feel the beginning of it rather than when the actual thing goes backwards. So I kind of go, so what's okay? Oh, there we are. And I think one of the benefits of a Mercury is, like, when that we're in this 9-week period, which we're in 3 times a year. We just kind of go, okay, we don't get too upset about it, which I think is actually a really good thing, because you just kind of know, okay, well, things aren't going to quite go my way during this period of time.
Exactly. Not my fault. It's Mercury's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever works.
And then my lucky, well, I have many, but we don't have that kind of time. So when we say things like moon in Pisces, or then it was like moon in Capricorn. I'm like, what?
Mm.
What do you mean? What's in a Capricorn? Like,
Uh-huh. Right.
so what does that mean? I mean, I think I kind of get it. I just
Okay, well, why don't you tell me what you get and then
so does okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So does that mean because I understand suns, like the description of
Mhm,
a Cancer or a
mhm.
Sagittarius or
Yep,
a
yep.
Pisces, a Taurus,
Mhm.
etc. So does that mean that there are phases, planetary cosmic phases of where things are aligning? Is that what that makes sense? What I'm
No,
saying?
yeah, no, not
No,
quite.
that's okay.
Okay. So,
Yeah, like no
okay.
moon.
Okay, so we have, there are let's see, I think there are 10 planets, that we know about. They're asteroids, but let's just say we've got 10 planets, moon that are in the chart, moon, sun, Mercury, Venus, all the way up to Pluto, and we all have them. And each planet reflects a certain kind of personality. It's a certain kind of energy. So
Right.
the moon is related to the feminine. It's related to our natural way of being, how we approach things, our experience of our mother. It's the archetypal mother line because it's all about the moon.
Okay.
And so it's like our emotional disposition and how we naturally relate to things is through the moon. So
Okay.
then the sign, which is Pisces, yours is in Libra, mine's in Sagittarius, reflects the qualities. It reflects the how. So a moon in Libra will approach many emotional circumstances with the need for harmony, for doesn't,
Mm.
not necessarily wanting conflict, wants everybody to get along, will deliberate things. Like it's an so the moon is generally related to our emotional disposition. So in an air sign, which would be like Libra,
Mm-hmm.
we got two different elements happening here. So there may be just a little bit of like disconnect, right? Because Libra is air and detached and wants to see the big picture. And the moon is kind of going, yes, but I want to be emotional. And then Libra kind of goes, yes, but we have to weigh all of the individual. We have to make sure that everybody's heard and everybody has a say. And the moon saying, but yes, but I want to be emotional, right? So you know
In a
so
nutshell.
yeah, so the Libra reflects the qualities, like
Okay.
how the planet expresses itself. So my my moon in Sagittarius likes to put things in a philosophical perspective. That's how I approach my emotional life. I'm always looking for meaning. I'm wanting to. I again. I also get bored and I get restless. I love to travel. I love to explore. I love to learn. I mean, I love to learn. So that is the qualities of that, right? So each planet has a quality. And so we then learn about how that energy, that archetypal energy related to the planet, how that gets expressed through the sign. Make sense?
That it really deeply, deeply does. And I will be talking to my brother later. I told him that I was chatting with you today, and he's like, "Okay, let me know." I'm like, "I will. I'll call you after." He goes, "I need insights." I said, "I know." Like, oh my gosh. But yeah, that made a lot of sense. Thank you
Yeah.
very, very much.
Yeah, yeah, you're
And
welcome.
I'm trying to be conscious of time, but
Mm.
thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it was
Again,
really lovely.
I will keep chatting with you forever, but I will stop it here. And I will thank you so much for
Well, it
doing
was
this.
lovely. It was great to talk to you. I
Thank you
hope
so
it
much.
I hope it helped.
deeply. And
Yeah,
again, I
beautiful.
will ensure that all your contact information is included in the notes below. And
Great.
and I know how busy you are. I mean, the wait lists are real.
Yeah, the wait list is
The
very
wait
real.
list is real.
However, I do have a monthly newsletter. I've got courses. People can follow me on, Twitter and Facebook.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so even though you can't work with me, people will not be able to work with me individually. There's lots of other opportunities that people can, connect.
Absolutely. Well,
So
thank
good.
you very much, Christine. So I'm going to
You're
pause,
very welcome.
but don't go anywhere.
Okay.